Welcome to ACX University. I'm Scott Jacoby, and I'm joined by author Jessica Hawkins. Today, we're going to talk about audiobook marketing, looking at the full scope of a holistic view from 90 days before a title is launched, including launch day, and 90 days afterwards. Jessica does a great job of putting this all together, and I'm really excited to get into sort of how you do all that and just learn from what you do. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are a USA Today best-selling author, known for your emotionally gripping and off-the-charts romance, off-the-charts hot romance. You've been dubbed the Queen of Angst by both peers and readers for your smart and provocative work. You've gathered a cult-like following of fans who love to be torn apart and put back together. Welcome. Really good to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So Jessica, tell us about your journey to becoming an author and how you found success and then how you got into audiobooks through ACX.
So about 7 years ago, almost to the month, I was living in New York City, working in retail and just not really feeling fulfilled by my job. And so I was kind of looking for something else. And it kind of just came together. I had never really aspired to be a writer, but I had read some romance books, and at the same time, I was looking to sort of start my own business. And I just started writing one day, and soon after I had left my job, I was ready to go all in, and self-publishing really appealed to me. I never really wanted to go the publishing route because I love running my own business, and I wanted to kind of I was a marketing major actually in college, business and marketing. And so it kind of appealed to me from that sense, doing my own thing, and but I needed a product, and so I wanted to get into the writing as well. So
how did you get into the audiobook side of things?
So I'd heard a lot about audiobooks and kind of wanted to get in early before everybody else did. And so I took the plunge, and whenever you're sort of an early adopter, that kind of thing, there's a trial and error period. So the first year and a half to 2 years, I was kind of just struggling, trying to get my name out there as an audiobook author. And then with one release, it really kind of took off from there, and I haven't looked back since. So I'm really glad that I got in when I did.
Yeah, and so are we.
Yeah.
And I think you do a great job of putting together both the artistic side with your fantastic writing, as well as we'll get into, just having an end-to-end view of everything from a smart marketing perspective. Makes total sense since you said that you went to school for marketing and you have a degree in that. I'm curious how you balance, how you juggle the creative side of writing and producing that content, but also with the business side of marketing it and running your own business.
Yeah, it's not always easy. I kind of find that, some authors will say I put my creative hat on and then I put my marketing hat on. And there is definitely some of that, but it's kind of you're always wearing both hats. So, on a day-to-day basis, I try to set aside the morning to write, and really, because that's the most important thing that I do is writing the books.
Right.
And so I will kind of set aside that time, and then in the afternoons I'll switch into marketing mode. But really, you're sort of always thinking from both angles. But that's what I love about self-publishing. I wouldn't have it any other way. Yeah, I really love getting to play both roles most of the time.
Well, it's so interesting. I think you just touched on something really interesting, which is that setting aside time to say this is my creative time, and then separating this is my marketing time, my business time, and not necessarily being willing to jump back and forth and I better answer this email even though this is my writing time and whatever. So just having that separation sounds like it's a really important starting point.
It's crucial, I would say, because I've been doing this 7 years now, and so I know that if I go into my email or if I open my internet browser at all, something urgent is going to come up and it's going to direct my day. And so I really want to be proactive instead of reactive to my day, and so that begins with opening my Word document first and nothing else. And I have never found that I missed a truly urgent email or Facebook message or anything like that. And so I know it's right for me that I've got to, first thing in the morning, doesn't matter what time it is, I've got to open the Word document, and that's it.
Well, so now it's marketing time, right? Because we're here to talk about marketing.
Yeah.
And so let's shift from talking about what you do early in the day to talking about what you do early in the process. You see what I did there? Of starting to market your audiobooks.
Yes.
So let's start with like pre-production. As you're thinking about launching an audiobook, and I don't
Yeah.
know, maybe you're thinking about this actually as you're writing the book, but whenever that part of the process is for you, as you're thinking of that, what are the very first things that are on your mind, laying the groundwork for the marketing of that audiobook?
Well, what you said is true. Really, I think the audiobook part begins with the manuscript. So I do try to keep in the back of my mind what I'm going to be doing with audio while I'm writing. Sometimes there are opportunities there. If I'm sort of generally, I know what point of view I'm going to be writing in, but if there is an opportunity to do both, I'm like, well,
Both male and female?
yeah,
Is what you
well,
mean?
to do both or to pick one over the other.
Okay.
If there's generally there's not, but once in a while it's like, well, this could go either way. Which POV should I do? I'll kind of think, how would this sound in audio? I try to be conscious of dialogue tags and things like that when I'm doing the audio, when I'm writing the manuscript for audio. So it really starts very early in the process. Beyond that, of course, there's the casting. So I kind of start thinking about that. How does this character fit? Who's going to be a good role for this? And once I'm, sort of in that zone, then I can announce the audiobook. So that's sort of the first thing that I do on social media. Get very excited. Guess what? So-and-so is coming to audio. If you love this hero, you're going to hear him in audio. That's if it's coming out after the ebook. But just letting people know that it's actually coming, I think that's really important and something that many authors forget to do. You just sort of launch in like, oh, guess what? I cast the audiobook, but it's good to say there is audio on the way.
And share your authentic excitement about it.
Yeah, because I'm super excited. I've gotten a lot more into audio since I started producing my own. And so, yeah, of course, I'm always excited to see their reaction to the news too.
So yeah, all that makes a ton of sense. And for you, somebody who's been doing this for a little while now, when you're launching a new product, and that's what it sounds like each book is, right? To where you're a business person and it's a new product, so you're thinking about the marketing of that product from the very beginning of launching it. Is there any way that the previous book that you've done, you leverage that towards marketing the next book that's about to come out?
Yeah, absolutely. I think backlist is a really important tool, not just in audio, but in ebooks as well. But I think especially if I'm using a narrator that I've used before, I know that I have an audience for that. So I want to take advantage of that. And so the codes, ACX codes, are really useful for that. I might run giveaways to past books in my backlist to, maybe introduce new listeners to my work and get them excited for what's coming next. Or, some listeners who've been waiting or holding off or want to wait for the whole series, that kind of thing. I write a lot of series, and so especially if I'm working on book 2 or 3, and that's the audio that I'm getting ready to launch, I will freely give away audiobook codes for book 1. And I will
reel them in early.
Yeah. I definitely want people hooked early on, and so the more of book 1 that gets out there, the more of book 2 and 3, etc. So my personal Facebook group, audio groups, sometimes my mailing lists, those are some arenas where I can do a giveaway and sort of pass on that excitement about what's coming.
Yeah, it's funny. You just sort of started answering the next question I was going to ask you, which was sort of before we get too far into this, what are your key channels for marketing your audiobooks? So we touched on Facebook group. And so can you tell me a little more about that?
Sure. So I have my own Facebook reader group. Those are fans of my work. They're all in one space. And so my Facebook group is really great. I love them. It's called The Penthouse. And we talk books, audiobooks all day long, that kind of thing. So that's really where my true fans are. And then I also am a member of a couple audio-specific groups, audio romance, I should say. And so there's a ton of listeners in there who I interact with on a regular basis. And so they're really great at, keeping me in the loop sometimes. When I'm deep in the writing cave, I can pop up and see what's going on in the audio world. So those are two really important places. Probably the most important is the audiobook mailing list. So I have
Your own
I
audiobook
have,
mailing list?
yeah, a specific mailing list just for my listeners. I want to make sure that they get news first and immediately. So the mailing list, that's super important. And then I have also teamed up with some other authors to do a joint mailing list as well.
Oh.
And so we share a lot of the same listeners. Listeners want to be kept up to date. They're getting, newsletters from different places. And so it's all consolidated into one. That's new releases, sales, and casting announcements usually go out in that one. So that's another place. But and then Twitter and Instagram. Instagram is also can be a huge tool for promoting audio because you've got the video aspect and they can actually hear the narrators and stuff. So
Right. Leveraging the magic of what makes audio so great, the audio itself.
yes.
And you also, so you touched on Facebook groups, but you also have your own Facebook feed, and do you treat that differently than the group itself?
So I have a Facebook author page that has the most followers, but it's probably the least impactful, I would say. I definitely share there. Videos seem to go over well there, so I will make specific videos just for my author page. For example, if I have the sample of the, before or after the audiobook comes out, if I have the sample, I can, record myself looking at and reading the paperback and have the audiobook going in the background and sort of like my reaction, like, wow, you know.
Cool. Putting yourself right in it.
Yeah, so those seem to go over well in Instagram stories and also on the Facebook page. But yeah, I can't really stress enough that each platform has its own sort of way of promoting and handling it and reaching audiobook listeners. So that's cool. There's like a never ending content, hard to keep up with, but important. And if that's overwhelming, then you can pick, 2 or 3 of your favorite spots or your most responsive spots. It's going to be different. Some people do really great on Twitter. For me, it's sort of an afterthought, but.
All right. And that it's more just about your personality and who you are and what you like to share, and then determining which platform makes the most sense for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I think it has to fit in with your personality. If it seems at all forced, then it's not going to work for anybody. They're going to feel that.
They pick up on it right away.
I'm not going to enjoy it, and I'm probably going to dump it in, a month or 2. So it's best for me to just focus on the platforms that I enjoy and that they enjoy hearing from me on.
Right.
So.
And so touching once more on the Facebook groups, you shared a really cool, interesting tip that I loved the last time we talked about the way you plant just the little initial seeds. And I think it was during like the casting phase, some keywords that you will put into the Facebook group. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah. So casting is sort of the next step after you've announced the audiobook, you're doing the casting. This is a huge opportunity for me to let listeners know what's coming. And so one of the ways that I'll do it several different ways, but I like to sort of throw in some keywords when I'm in the Facebook group and let them tell me who they think would be a good fit. But the keywords are cool because it kind of it preps them, it like sits with them like, oh, this is what's coming. So for instance, the one that I'm casting now, I have, a growly anti-hero, and I have a Romeo-esque lover boy. And so I'm very careful about the words that I use when I'm in the groups or when I'm talking about it to my mailing list, because that right there is your first opportunity to introduce people to what's coming.
Right.
And it sort of sets the tone. And so, for me, if I saw a post like that, I see growly anti-hero, I think I need that audiobook. So I'm going to keep that on my radar,
Yeah.
And
It's
then if you...
subliminal kind of almost,
right.
Yeah.
And if you're writing a rom-com, you're going to use different language, maybe something a little softer, or, I'm looking for a narrator with the best comedic timing. Who do you guys love? Who are you loving right now? Who are you listening to? That's sort of, it varies. And then those people who love rom-coms are picking up on
And
that.
now they know, oh, it's
And now they
something
know
with
what's
great
coming.
comedic timing.
Yeah.
I'm into that.
Yeah, I'm into that. I like to laugh. And so I'm going to be watching that audiobook.
Cool. Yeah, I love the idea of subtly planting the initial seeds.
Yeah, and it helps me too. It helps me narrow down what exactly I'm looking for in a narrator, because now I've forced myself to boil it down to one or
Oh,
two
good point.
words.
Yeah.
And so that's really important when you're casting, of course. You don't want to just go with, whoever's the most popular that day. You want to know that they're going to be able to deliver on the character's needs. And so that's a good way for me to sort of get into that mindset as well.
That's really smart. There's levels on levels to that.
Of course.
So let's move out of like pre-production and start to think the book is cast, the book is in production. How are you building up excitement while it's in production? Maybe compared to like what you might do for the ebook or the print book or something like that.
So if I have any news from the narrators, I like to share that. I like to let my listeners know they're recording now. I've heard from one of the narrators that this is the sexiest scene that they've ever read, or, you hope that they say that, but that's just an example. But, and then you want to pass that on to the listeners, get them as excited as I am for listening to the audiobook. Proofing is another great opportunity. That means when I'm proofing my own audiobook, I do a lot of proofing on airplanes. And so it always seems to line up that I'm going to some event or convention or whatever, conference, where, I'm just getting the audiobook back. So, I'll post a picture at takeoff, like, okay, here we go. Like I'm settling in, I'm going to listen. I'll let you guys know. That kind of thing, just really playing up. So I think proofing your audiobook while you're doing it, make it fun for everybody, and let them know what's coming.
And along the same lines of sort of offering those little opportunities to connect, those little crumbs, you told me about another kind of subtle thing you do with your newsletter that you send out. And I just thought this was so smart in terms of how you, again, like just plant a little seed to let people know that there's a lot of people that are excited for your audiobooks.
Yeah. So my general mailing list, which is not the audio specific one, I usually have an introduction at the beginning of each newsletter, and I try to keep audiobook at the forefront of things, because one of the best marketing moves I think that any author can make is to treat your listeners like you would your ebook readers as well, and really give them the spotlight and the same treatment that you would an ebook reader. And so I try to mention, not in every way or not always at the intro, but I'll say, by the way, if you're waiting for the audiobook, here's an update, just let them know what's going on. Or later on in the email, if I have any audiobook news, I'll do a special section for that. So I just try to make sure to mention that in the general mailing list. And then, there's the audio one too. So.
And I like the terminology there. If you're waiting for the audiobook, for those that are waiting for the audiobook, it's kind of, it just convinces people that there's a lot of people that are.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, you get
really
a lot
this.
of questions, a lot of, when is the audio coming? I'm so excited. Who did you cast? And so I like to, this is just a little like fun thing I like to do is when I'm, writing about it in the newsletter, I will say, for those of you who've been asking, or for all the questions I've been getting.
Right.
And, if you're not quite there yet, or maybe some audiobooks, aren't getting like the same buzz, there's always going to be at least one person who's asking for it. So I just try to throw that in there for all of you guys who've been asking, because it really
listeners don't know how many people are actually asking, right?
Yeah, it looks like there's a lot of demand for it, and if other people are excited, then more people are going to get excited.
I should be excited too.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just a little tip.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like we're hitting on a couple like subtle little things people can put into play right away.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've covered a lot of good stuff about casting and pre-production and the sort of 90 days before launch day. So now launch day is here. It's really exciting. Your book is available. Tell me what that launch day push looks like for you.
So much of the work goes into pre-production. Launch day is sort of just the day to really be present online and make sure that all your channels are updated. I want everybody to know that the book is out. So audiobook mailing list goes out first. I've made a promise to them that they're going to know right when the book is ready. And so mailing list, hit the Facebook groups. I post in my reader group. This is live. I'm super excited about it. I want to convey all the enthusiasm that I have to share this audiobook with them. So I start with those two, and then, the Facebook audio specific groups, I make sure to hit those too, let them know, those are all listeners, and some of them have been waiting. And so sometimes they even share before I do, which is great too.
Yeah.
But before I can hop in there, sometimes there's a post. So that's good. And then, all the other Instagram, Twitter, that kind of thing. But just really making sure to blast it everywhere.
Yep.
And then I update my website. So I do a blog post to let everybody know that it's live. Basically, you're giving the audiobook the same treatment that you would the ebook,
Right.
which is super important. Make sure that, everybody knows and that the listeners are ready for it.
And it might sound obvious, right? But it's like, you've got this new product, it's out.
Yeah.
Hopefully, all people need to do is be aware of it.
Yeah.
And then they want to go buy it either because of what you've built with them, or
Yeah.
they've listened to your previous works or whatever.
Yeah, it does sound obvious, but I notice that a lot of authors don't do it. And so whether they have a simultaneous release or if the audiobook comes after, you still have to make sure to give the audiobook its due, because there are listeners who are really eager to get it.
Right.
And so, just make sure that your posts are specifically for audio. And because I think, and I'm guilty of this too, in the very beginning when I first started, I would put out the audiobook. I would make maybe one post and, let it do its thing. And so that's why I like to stress to other people, because I've made that mistake myself, that no, this is a launch. This is a release. It's just as important as the ebook and the paperback and everything else. So make sure you're giving it its due. So yes, hitting all those channels, doing the blog post. And then I make sure that the audiobook section, because I have a specific audiobook section of my website, making sure that that's updated. I put a sample on there that I want everybody to go and listen to so that they're hooked.
Right.
And I use my ACX referral bounty fees as well. I want to make sure that anybody who's getting the audiobook for the first time through me, that, I'm getting credit for that. Making a little bit of extra cash off of it. And so all those bounty links, those need to go in the Facebook post, the website, everything like that. But yeah, and then, just basically letting everybody know with those bounty referral links that the book is live. Everybody kind
Now's
of get
the time
it.
to go get it.
Yes.
And it's so interesting moving towards so like that's launch day. That's pretty I guess there might be the misconception that there's all this stuff to do on launch day, but it's really just letting the launch speak for itself and pushing it along by making sure people know it's out there.
Yeah. If you've done a lot of work leading up to launch day, then launch day should really be fun for you and for the listeners, and really just getting the word out. But a lot of the work happens before and after launch.
And so the first thing after launch that you told me about, which I think is really smart, and I don't know if a lot of other people are thinking of it this way, is you said you actually don't give out promo codes, let people get free copies right after the book comes out on launch day right away. Why is that?
Well, I think that there is a really crucial period for Audible and, the other platforms where you want as many people on your book page as possible buying. And so I want to make sure that those people who show up are coming, getting their audiobook, and then I sort of save the giveaways for later on. And
How much later on?
I'll probably do at least a week.
Okay.
I don't want to give away a bunch of copies right away, and everybody now has it because I
They might
gave
have
it to
bought
them.
instead.
Yeah, they might have bought it instead, or because I write so much in series, that's not really a huge issue for me, because when book 2 or 3 comes, I might give out a few audiobooks, but I'm generally giving out as many copies of book 1 as I can.
Right. Are you strategic about how you give out your promo codes? Are you making sure that you're stating that they are in exchange for reviews, or do you just sort of give them out and try to spread the word as wide as possible? How exactly are you leveraging those?
I'll pretty much give them out freely. Again, if it's book 1 versus a standalone, that's a little bit of a different story. I'll be a little more strategic with a standalone. But yeah, I like to mention reviews are really great. And, I really appreciate if you enjoy the book or not. Leave a review at the after you listen. But I don't want to make the giveaway situation stressful for the listener or for anybody. And I want, a positive association with the book. And so sometimes there are strings attached and sometimes there are not. But as far as review goes, they're super helpful to authors. And, I am very proactive about getting reviews. But at the end of the day, they're really for the listeners and the readers. And so I try not to encroach too much in that space as far as what kind of review they want to leave and stuff. But yeah, I will mention when I send the code, if you could leave a review on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, that would be really helpful.
And hopefully they're willing to do that. It's not much to ask for getting a free copy of the book, right? It's sort of, a back and forth connection between you and your fans.
Yeah.
I've heard from a number of authors that they will do audiobook trailers where they're creating something that they can use to promote the audiobook. But you actually do book trailers that incorporate narration from the audiobook. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. So I love to make a book trailer, and I had this idea, why don't I try to tie in some audiobook listeners while I'm promoting the ebook as well? And so I reached out to my narrator, asked her to do a voiceover for the book trailer. It's less than a minute. It's just something really quick that sort of introduces the book and, gives you some info about where to get it and things like that. And so I thought that was a unique way to say, not only like, here's this book trailer and don't you want to read this book, but also here's a narrator that you've maybe never heard because you're not a listener. Let me try something new by pulling from the ebook and the audio and putting them together.
Planting the little seed again, little subtle. This is what we're hitting. A lot of subtle ways that you get in front of listeners.
Yeah, it's a new way to say, don't you want to read this book, but also,
don't you want to listen to it?
Don't you want to listen to it? Yeah,
Right.
this a top-notch narrator, and she's gonna draw you in. So maybe try the audiobook this time.
Yeah, I love it. So let's take a look and a listen at an example of one of those.
It was a hot summer day when I met him on the construction site next to my parents' house. Manning was older, darker, experienced. I wore a smiley-face t-shirt and had never even been kissed. I loved Manning before I knew the meaning of the word. I was too young, he said, but I would wait. I've learned, though, that nothing else matters if you suffer the heartbreak that comes with falling for someone you can never have. Because even though I saw Manning first, my older sister saw him next. From best-selling author Jessica Hawkins comes an epic love saga called Breathtaking.
Lake.
Please, one kiss, and we can stop.
Another really cool trick that you've told me you leverage is the Audible wish list. What do you tell your fans about the wish list, and how does that help sort of get the word out about your audiobook?
So the wish list is a really cool tool for me to begin with. I put all my audiobooks on my own personal wish list because when Audible has a sale, they'll send you an email that says, oh, something on your wish list is on sale. And so for me, it's like, oh, I've got a sale going on with Audible. Now I can promote it to my listeners.
Right.
So I like to have them I encourage them to add.
Them being your fans.
Yeah, I encourage my listeners to add the audiobooks to their wish list as well. And I don't necessarily say it's because might go on sale, but because, I can't guarantee that. But if it does go on sale, then they'll get an alert for that. And so I'll encourage that. Sometimes I'll use that as a giveaway entry as well. I'm giving away 10 copies of book 1, add book 2 to your audiobook or your Audible wish list. And just post a screenshot or let me know that you did it.
Right.
And it's good to have that presence on their wish list. Yeah, it's a great
cool.
tool.
It's another tool that I don't think even we've talked about a lot.
Yeah.
And so I picked up that tip from you, so that's really smart.
Yeah, it was an accident. It wasn't on purpose, but once I got an alert in my email, I was like, well, other people are going to get alerts too. So I want my listeners getting alerts.
Just a great way to think of it, something that happened to you and taking it and putting it out to others. One other thing I want to get into, the last sort of part of like launch and slightly after launch is like awards. What do you think about in terms of submitting your titles for awards? Is like, let's say the Audies or the Voice Arts Awards, is that valuable? Do you find value in that? Is that something you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think because we're talking about marketing, I think that's another marketing opportunity in itself. It gives you the chance to, if you're nominated, say, oh my God, my book was nominated for an Audie. It was, it's a finalist, and that lends, some credibility to your product. But it's also a chance to shout about it on social media and get really excited and show some recognition to the narrators too, because they're really at the heart of it. I think that is it's a great thing to submit to those. To be nominated is wonderful. And then if you are a finalist or a winner, you can also use that verbiage in your blurb, which I think is always good. It's always good to have a little bit of, 2019 Audie finalist. That's what I have in one
Just
of
a
my
little shine
blurbs.
on there, make it impressive.
Yeah, and it's it's an ego boost for me too. I put a lot of work into my audiobooks and choosing my narrators and holding them to really high standards, and so to be recognized, damn right, I'm gonna shout it from the rooftops.
So with that in mind, let's move from, I guess, the polar opposite of feelings and emotion, which is data, right? And so
Also important.
also important, but just a little bit of a different feel.
Yeah.
And it makes a ton of sense that, I know you've told me that you're so involved with, you put stuff out there and you can't just put it out there and then forget about it.
Right.
And so as somebody with a marketing background, talk to me about the importance of going back and looking at the data for how things you've done marketing-wise have performed and how you use that to inform, the next marketing aspects you might try.
Yeah, so the marker kind of moves with each release. You hope to be doing better and better. And if you've got a series going, you've got to pay attention to that too. But yeah, I will definitely pay attention to the data. You can generally tell if something's not going well, or if something is going great. If it's going great, take notes. What did I do differently this time?
What worked?
Yeah, what worked? What's good? And so, but then you have the other side of it. If it's not performing how you expect it to, or if it's performing worse than your last release, then you've got to sort of take stock. And I will, start with the cover. Is there an issue with the cover? Sometimes maybe an ebook cover doesn't translate well into the square, and so you've got to come up with some way to fix that. The blurb as well. I try to find authors who are popular in audio, like Corinne Michaels or Louise Bay. I'm big fans of theirs, and they do really well in audio. So I might reach out to them and say, "Would you be willing to listen?" and put a blurb on the top of my summary, and so that will catch listeners. So if you haven't already done that, that's one way. And then also the award recognition too. If you have any sort of anything that's worth mentioning, you might want to try that in the blurb. These are little things that you can sort of do in the beginning.
And something so smart about the getting another author to contribute to your blurb or your description that's just coming to my mind now is that that will help you with listeners that go to Audible and search through the metadata, because somebody who's searching for Louise Bay, if she's coming up in your description, it's not going to be the first result, but you might appear there in the search, and then, oh, well, I'm getting this. They must be related. Maybe you've, blazed the path for a new fan.
Yeah, definitely. That metadata is important for that reason. And then if they are also buying Louise's book when they're on my page or vice versa, then it's more likely to go into her also bots or my also bots. And so those, of course, are really important for release day, release month. You want to be in other people's also bots who are similar. So that's, you have to be kind of not strategic about which authors you use, but you don't want to pick somebody who's outside your subgenre either.
Somebody that makes sense with what
Yeah,
you're doing.
you don't want to choose somebody who's really popular in rom-com if you're writing a dark, angsty book. You want to be specific to that genre. So, that is a good way to sort of get into other people's to reach new listeners, because that's really the goal, I think, with each release is make your current listeners happy, but also find new ones.
Well, that's so funny because you just touched on, again, you predicted my next question, which I was going to ask you when you talk about analyzing what you've done, looking at the data, figuring out if something worked or didn't. Do you, at the outset, set goals around that? And maybe it's just as high level as gaining new listeners, somebody that never listened to me before. But talk to me about like what sort of goals you're thinking through, that you then go back and check to see whether you hit them or not.
Yeah, the goals are so important. That's really probably one of the first things that you need to do when you're even launching an audiobook. What are my
I'm
goals?
only asking about it now. We got to go back to the beginning of the interview and pretend I asked about it. But yeah, so
yeah, you really you want to ask yourself, what am I trying to achieve with this audiobook? I recently had an audiobook come out in January that was a little bit more of a lighter listen for me. It was a little bit different from what I usually write. And so my goal for that is going to be different than my goal for the series I'm currently working on.
Right.
So with something like that, I'm really trying to reach more listeners, new listeners, bring them in to introduce them to my brand. Because a lighter audiobook is just a little bit easier of a sell. You know,
Right.
the tropes are really easy to market and to tell people about. And then I also I like to make back my investment by a certain amount of time. And so if you're talking really, you know, like numbers, like I will have some idea of by this many weeks in, I want to make sure that I have recouped my investment. To me, that is a success.
And you do per finished hour payment.
Yes.
For your books. And so that's a good, really aggressive goal.
It is,
to be
yeah.
earning it back within a matter of weeks, you're
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
And then everything after that, you know.
Yeah.
gravy.
Yeah. It wasn't always like that. You know, like I said, it's
to
kind
start
of a
somewhere.
moving target. But in the beginning, you know, I experienced what it was like to not make back that investment for over a year. And so I don't want to go back to that. And so with every book, I do have that hard goal of I would like to make it back by this date, you know.
And so as we start to wrap things up here and get into sort of the back end of book A's marketing life cycle right now. So now we're 75, 80, 90 days out. Is there anything else sort of towards the end of that life cycle that we haven't touched on? Or does it just, you know, sort of now it just falls into like the baseline of all your other work and now you're on to the next book?
Yeah, it does fall into the baseline, and that's super important. Every audiobook is going to lift that baseline a little bit, so that's a good thing. But that's why I'm such a fan of series, is I feel like, one, with your backlist, the marketing never ends. There's always an opportunity. I'm constantly promoting books for my backlist, and you know, anniversaries are a good opportunity for that. It's been, you know, my 1-year publiversary. I never said that word out loud. I've only typed it.
This is ACX
Publiversary. Yeah.
Publiversary.
Yeah, that's a good time to say it's been a year. You know, can you believe it? You know, what was your favorite part, or what else have you listened to by this narrator since then? And so, yeah, I think, and then the series is just really good. I'm always pushing book 1 as much as possible. And then, you know, you have your Facebook advertising too.
Yep.
When I'm advertising the ebook, I will make sure that, you know, always that there's a prominent link to the audiobook in the text of the advertisement and the copy. And I will also do a little emoji with the
headphones.
Yeah, so that people their eye goes directly to
Right.
the audio.
So just including it in all the audio and all of the various ongoing marketing you've got for everything.
Yeah. Anytime
So
I have an Amazon, Apple Books link, I have an audiobook link as well. Even now, for the series that I'm working on now has already come out in ebook. And so with every single post that I do about the ebook, that's in any way marketing or advertising, I include a new release alert for what's coming up. So like I want to make sure that those listeners are covered, and that link will take them to my audiobook mailing list, and that says to get an alert for my next release and future releases, sign up here. And so I want to make sure that I'm not leaving those listeners behind. Just because I don't have the link yet doesn't mean I can't be promoting it and getting you know, new listeners added to the mailing list.
Yeah. And capturing them so that they continue to get those.
Yeah.
We've looped back around now, so they get that. Now they'll get the message. Hey, I'm launching this book in audio.
Right.
Aren't you so excited?
Yeah.
So yeah, we did
It's
it.
a constant cycle.
We made it back around.
Yeah.
So my last question, just as we reach the end of this, is just what is your like big takeaway? What is your big piece of advice for an author who maybe doesn't feel that she quite puts it all together the way that you do from start to finish? Like, how can they unlock that ability within themselves?
I think the best piece of advice that I ever got, and which I will pass on, is, and I've said this a couple times already, is just to give the audiobook the same treatment as you would anything else. Just make sure that you are really pushing it as its own entity, and making sure that you're reaching listeners as well as readers. And readers are a really important part of that as well, because you might have readers who have never listened to an audiobook, and you can go to them and say, you want to experience this couple in a new way. I'm so excited about how this couple sounds in audio. And if you love them in the ebook, this is a whole different experience. You want to make sure to experience them this way too. I've had a lot of success with that as well. So just kind of making sure that you are treating the audiobook as its own entity.
So thanks so much for joining us today. I think we provided a fantastic look at the entire life cycle of audiobook marketing, from the time that you even think about writing the book until the time that that book is now just another part of the product line that you're offering as a business person. So thank you so much for that. And thank you very much at home for joining us and for watching. We'll catch you next time on ACX University.